and to our friends on Facebook, and to those of you watching on Instagram, hello. I'm Bree. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Apollo Performance Wear, and I'm here with my friend Melissa McDaniel, who is the founder of Turning Point Dance Creations. She's an educator, she's a choreographer, and a social justice advocate. Today, we're answering the question, what is our responsibility to promote and uphold social media safety for our dancers? Social media has become a huge part of our culture. I think that's undeniable, and it directly impacts the arts and entertainment industry like so many others. While there are a lot of wonderful things about it, when used responsibly, studies are also showing us the tremendous amount of pressure and anxiety and stress it's creating in our youth. For young dancers, it's no different. And there's not a whole lot of regulation in regards to social media protocol and standards for youth especially, and that leaves us all to kind of figure it out ourselves. So there's a lot of conversation happening about who shoulders that responsibility. Is it the parents? Is it studio owners? Is it educators and coaches? Or is it the dancers themselves? So we're going to dive into this today, and we have a guest expert here to provide some insight for you as always. Before we introduce our guest panelists for this episode, I want to give a few reminders to you. Throughout the episode, you may see Melissa and me looking around right and left, kind of like Brady Bunch style. We are not crazy. We are monitoring our chat on Facebook Live. We're monitoring the chat on Zoom. And we're also trying to bring our friends over from Instagram onto Facebook Live to join the discussion. We want to promote engagement and perspective, and we all want, the more people we can bring into this conversation, the better, and the more we can propel our industry forward. So that is what we're doing. Please contribute. We want open hearts and minds, and no question is silly. We want to hear your thoughts. If there's any point where you have a question for us or for Kelly, please put that in the comments or the chat boxes, and we'll make sure to get those answered for you by the end of the episode. And let's get to it, Melissa.
Yes, I am so very excited.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. I'm muted. There you go.
I'm so bad. I was like, am I muted? I'm so very excited to be able to bring Kelly to the show and to introduce her. So Kelly is a fourth generation dance professional, tracing her lineage through her mother, grandparents, great grandmother, and all of them were successful studio owners, as well as her great uncle, the late Gene Kelly. So that we have royalty in the building. Awesome. And since 2009, Kelly has taught tap and jazz at colleges in the colleges of Fenway Dance. A graduate of Oklahoma City University and Boston University, Kelly has written professionally for more than 15 years for clients including Dance Spirit, National Geographic Channel, JetBlue,
wow,
Duncan, Adidas, and more. There have to be more after all of that. But today, Kelly combines her passions for communications and dance to help dance studios and companies and professionals with branding. So thank you, Kelly, so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So really? Like Bree alluded to, this is a strange and tumultuous time for everyone. But the dance industry, the arts in general, have really been particularly battered in this pandemic. So can you just start off by telling us and our viewers about the work that you do for dance studios and how it's important to refine their message and branding during this time, and how they can work with you too?
Yeah, definitely. I would love to. Thank you again for having me, and thank you for bringing this topic to light. I think it is so important that we have more discussions around it, rather than just burying our noses in social media, but really talking about it. So this is great. But like you said, I do combine my love of dance and communications to help dance professionals with their branding. And what I love to tell people is the reason why I love doing this. When growing up, as you said, my mom owned a dance studio. And when I decided to move away and find a dance studio to teach at, I found myself a little lost. I could go teach at places with great technique, but I didn't really ever get a sense of what that studio was like until I was there teaching. And it's hard to find a good fit sometimes that aligns with your values and your teaching style. So, fast forward 15 years, I've been working in advertising and communications, and I became a dance mom myself, and started looking for a studio for my children. And those same feelings came back. It's like, how do I know what this dance studio stands for? What are their values? Is it aligned to what I want my children to be learning, not just in dance, because we know that they're learning so much more than that.
Right.
And I just saw this gap of what studios believed in and how they were translating that to prospective clients and even the people that were in their dance studios and maybe teachers they're looking to hire.
Mm-hmm.
So what I really like to do is help dance educators and studios and professionals, choreographers, anyone in the dance industry really that's bringing in and teaching dance, is how they identify their values and their why and what they stand for, and then how they take those values and translate them to communications, whether that's social posts, whether that's their website, whether that's a brand strategy, a content strategy. I've worked with people on landing pages and things like that. So it's really identifying those values and translating it into the messaging. And so I work with people one-on-one, and then I also have a customizable content toolkit that releases every month that people can sign up for. So they're getting these content posts that they are including their values in, but it's a time saver because they have some guides to go by.
Right. Right.
Well, and they have the confidence in knowing that they know what they're doing. They have somebody that's telling them what to do. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times you figure out social media, or you get to a place where you feel somewhat competent in it, and then they change the algorithm, or there's like a different, update to the app. And like, you have no idea all the things that change on a daily, sometimes, or weekly basis, sometimes daily. And so just the fact that you're giving this confidence in something that can be really overwhelming is, I think, so important. So thank you for being here. And you guys, we tell you, we're legit. Like, we're bringing you the experts, people that know what's going on and can give you the business. So we're not messing around. This is to hopefully propel us all forward, and so that when you know better, you can do better. So let's dive in. Kelly, dance is in your blood. You come from a long line of dancers, including the legendary, iconic Mr. Gene Kelly. When you reminisce with your family about the history of dance and the industry and the impact social media has had on all of it, how it's evolved, what is the most exciting thing that's come from that, and what are the biggest challenges you think that has come out of that?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, Bree, there's a long history of dance in my family, and many dance studios and different locations and different iterations of them through the years. And I just try to imagine my grandparents figuring out social media, and I
Lord,
just,
yeah.
I just,
My parents, for God's sakes, it's not even my grandparents, my parents.
yeah, I mean, my mom no longer runs her studio, but it was starting to trickle in when she was still in the studio business. And my grandparents closed they're no longer with us, but it's changed the face of the studio. It's changed how you get students. It's changed how students show up to dance, why they show up to dance. They show up because they want to dance like people they've seen on social media, which is just, it's great. It's getting more people interested in dance, but it's also, it can be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think when we start talking about dance on social media and how that's evolved over the years as it's come up, I actually start to see a lot of congruence with what dance went through in the 40s and 50s when Uncle Gene was on the screen and they were taking dance from the stage to the screen, and we're almost doing the same thing now. Back then they were trying to say, how do we replicate the stage experience on the screen? And now what we're seeing is we've gone from the stage to the horizontal screen. And, we've seen a lot of that in the past years. So You Think You Can Dance did great things for dance on film. World of Dance and Dancing with the Stars, all these beautiful films of dance on the screen. And now we've taken it and we've tilted it sideways. So we're all dancing in this vertical space now. And it's so fascinating to me. That film aspect of it has really changed the way we view dance and we interact with it. So I think that's one of the things that really comes up when we start talking about what dance appears like on the screen and how people are taking it in. And then when we think about the challenges that come with that, you have kids coming in not saying they want to dance like Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly or people they've seen in the movies. They're coming in, they're like, I want to dance like that person on TikTok. And you're like, okay,
Right.
well,
It's, yeah, it's mind blowing still. Yeah. But it's reality. And so we have to face it, right?
yeah, and you're like, well, you can do some of those dances, but in the dance studio, we're teaching a lot more than just the repetition of these movements that are in this vertical space. So I think it has this power to draw people in, but then it also has this interesting dynamic of, oh wait, that's not what you do here, almost. So there's this tension that I feel with what social media is doing right now.
I agree. There's definitely a push and a pull, a good and a bad. And it's almost like you have to look at it like, let's figure out how to channel these powers for good, and make everybody do that. And it's hard because there is no regulation. So it's almost a necessary evil, right? What are some ways you're seeing in your work and what research is showing us, in the ways that social media is negatively impacting different facets of our community, whether that's businesses like retail and studios, dance educators, or the dancers themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it does have positive and negative impacts, like we're saying here. So something that I think is really top of mind for everybody is, what is the access of social media doing to our dancers? The American Academy of Adolescent and Child Psychology has a lot to say across the spectrum of topics. And when it comes to social media, I think, one of the main concerns that they highlight is the exposure to inappropriate content. And you can use all the filters in the world and block things, but the truth is you just don't know what's out there until you come across it. So I think that's a big danger for our younger students. There's exposure to dangerous people. There's cyberbullying. There's oversharing of personal information and privacy concerns and identity theft. And those are all real concerns out in the world. But then we have the internal concerns of how the dancer is developing, and is social media affecting their sleep, affecting their relationships, affecting their time spent with their family. Is there a comparison trap that we fall into of, either talent or look or the amazing content that they're doing or the choreography, and how is that contributing to our, overall body image? And there's a lot of factors at play for dancers as individuals, for sure.
Absolutely.
I think for studios, we just touched upon it a little bit, is that people see this dance online, or they see this dancer that's the same age as their child. So the studio owners are there.
Yeah.
They have parents come, well, why can't my child do what this child does? They're the same age. Why can't my child go into this level? Why aren't we doing these tricks or this choreography? Or
It happens all the time.
All
It happens
the time.
all the time.
And that is such a tough position to be put in, because
Right.
as a business owner, you want to say the customer's always right, but as a dance educator, you have to draw limits and you have to set boundaries, and you have to educate not only your dancer at that point, but the parents as well, and say, this is what the reality is, and it's going to hurt, and it could turn some people away. But I think it's something that has to be a constant conversation, especially when a parent brings it in. I think it's a teaching moment for all of us.
Yeah.
And then just one more thing because you mentioned retail, and I think that there is some negative effects about people finding brands online and then just buying straight from them, which is great. But then I'm thinking about the local dance store owner and how much that can affect their business.
Absolutely.
And where we say, sometimes social media is a necessary evil, I like to say, in my positive spin, is that it's a beautiful opportunity, because I
love
think
that.
I
Yeah.
think it really is a chance for everyone, but dance store owners, to connect with their community. I think that there's your community better than the brand that's on Instagram.
Right.
just shipping from a warehouse. I think there's a really great opportunity to connect with studio owners, connect with dancers, find out what they need, and really serve them.
Yeah, and I know, Melissa, you have a follow-up question to this. And before we get to that, I have to ask, because we are a brand. We are a brand, and we also have retailers that carry our brand. And I will say this, that the biggest thing that I'm noticing, and this applies to any business really, but specifically to dance studios and retail stores, if you're not comfortable on social media, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost essential that you do that as a business owner, or you're going to be left in the dust. I mean, I have to say, as part of a dancewear brand who's trying to evolve the thinking in an industry and make an impact on an industry, you really have to incorporate social media into your business to connect, or it's just going to be that much tougher. Do you agree with that?
I agree that it would be a very deliberate decision to ignore social media,
Yeah.
and not necessarily the best business decision.
Right.
I think that people can do it. There's stores out there that are doing it,
Yeah.
but knowing how the audience of dance wear is evolving, I think that the social media is really an integral part of that marketing journey and that marketing plan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely. And so many of us as dance educators do bury our head in the sand when it comes to social media, because we have that fear of that comparison. Because I hear it so much. I was just typing in Facebook Live about, I hear it so much, especially around point. Well, can my child go on point? She really loves the way Misty Copeland looks. And it's like, well, she's 2. So no, point is not a thing.
Or I saw so-and-so is the same age as my daughter and she's on point.
Right.
Or he's whatever. They are on point, and my child is not on point, and I want my child on point.
Right.
But there's also then the realm of, there's no regulation in the dance world as to what is acceptable and what is not. And while this child over here might be on point,
right,
maybe they shouldn't be on point.
Right.
You know, but you can't, how do you explain that to a parent? They're seeing it in front of them on a screen.
Right. And that's just really hard. And hearing that, as much as we do, Kelly, how do we combat that? Like, how do we reverse this negative effect of this comparison of people coming in and saying, I want to dance like fill in the blank, a dancer who has only posted their best takes on Instagram. And there's no behind the scenes look at that. How do we combat that?
Oh, the curated Instagram profile view.
Delete, retake, restart, don't save that media, all of that. How do we combat that?
Yeah, well, I think, conversations like this are a perfect start. And I think, it's great that we're having this conversation today. I think conversations like this need to happen in studios with parents, with dancers. I remember back to being in the studio with competition team, and there would always be, you'd have your team meeting and the parents would be there and the dancers would be there. And you had talks about, not social media because it wasn't relevant, but you had talks about, how you're supposed to act and what you're supposed to wear. And, there were rules. And I think, that's at a competitive level, but there is room for that conversation at a recreational level too. So I think conversation is very important. The other thing that I strive to do, and I really like to challenge people to do, is to use social media to create more than they do consume. So there's a stat that of all the teens on social media, only 3% of their time is spent in creation mode versus consumption mode. When you're creating, you're focusing on doing your best. You're focused on your performance. You're focused on something artistic and an expression. When you're consuming, you are more than likely in that comparison trap. You're thinking, why can't I do that? Why don't we do that? Can I do that? Can I try that? Which isn't always the best way to look at social media. So I actually have challenged myself to this before, that whenever I open my social media app on my phone, I have to create something or interact with someone rather than consume. There's no scrolling. Like, I did a week challenge for myself, and it was every time I wanted to open, I needed to have something to post or needed to message someone to have a relationship. because I think that's one of the most powerful things that can come is that creation and developing your voice and developing your artistic self. And then those relationships that you're going to develop with people who you might not know from your studio, but you can start to engage with them. And
So is
then
the problem in the consumption, do you think?
I definitely think that there's a huge problem with the consumption.
Yeah.
I think when you're just scrolling and you're just saying, oh, I can't do that, or I can't do this, or you get lost. How many times have you picked up your phone,
So many.
started scrolling, and then you're like,
You're like,
what time is it?
yeah,
Right.
I can't get
You're
up.
like, oh, I should go to bed now, or I should be doing this now, or why didn't I spend those 30 minutes reading a book? I
Right.
think we get so caught up in seeing what everybody else is doing that we don't take time ourselves to think about what we want to create and how we want to express ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, and then the last piece I'll say on this, unless you guys have more questions, is about, rather than focus on these negatives and the risks, I really like to focus on the benefits.
Mhm.
Um, so, like I said, relationships, meeting new friends who you wouldn't otherwise meet, and sharing interests, I think is a benefit of social media. Finding community. I think about Facebook groups and how much community you can find on Facebook, and shared interests and learn things. I think that's another benefit. So when you can start to focus on doing those things that are going to help you grow rather than that like endless scrolling that's going to make you feel like an imposter or put you in that comparison trap.
Right.
That is how I like to focus on social media.
Right. And I love what you said. First of all, I have to call out that I love the create versus consume, because I never even thought about it as two different functions. And making sure that you have the balance to know how much you're creating and know how much you're consuming, and being aware and cognizant of that is going to be something that I definitely take away and encourage students to take away. Because that when you create, you put something out there, you definitely feel way more, I don't know, I guess confident
Mm-hmm.
in your abilities. Because it's easy to say they're better than me when you haven't even created anything to see if they're actually better than you, or you
Right.
haven't put anything out there to see if there's actually any type of comparison to be there. It's kind of like talking from the bench of a basketball game or a
That's
football.
right. That's right.
You have to get in the game to know, even if you're competitive, or even if you do have a space there. But I do want to talk about the beautiful opportunity, changing the negative to the beautiful opportunity, which is really kind of my next question was focused toward that negative, but I wanna take it and move it in the direction of, there are a lot of negative things, but like you said, there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of beautiful opportunities to greater reach and a wider network and more recognition and greater engagement in building those relationships, like you were saying. How do we, as studio owners and dance educators and parents, stand up and help students understand the beautiful opportunity, not the negative part of it? How do we turn their focus and their perspective to the beautiful opportunity?
Right. Right. I think that is probably the toughest thing. And so another thing that the American Child Psychiatric um, Academy says is, all these teens are on social media. They say upwards of like 9 hours a day, not including
Wow.
schoolwork,
Wow.
which is like, that is a
Wow.
crazy amount of time.
Okay.
So I think as parents, we have to get in there with them. Like we have to see what they're interacting with. We have to engage with it. We have to know it. Just like I like this comparison. You wouldn't drop your kid off at a movie that you didn't know what it was with people you didn't know. You
Right.
you just wouldn't. So,
Right.
Wow.
but by putting the phone in their hand, like you're enabling them access to lots of movies you don't know and lots of people you don't know. So I think getting in there and engaging as parents and as dance educators, that's the only way that we are going to start to figure out how to work with our dancers, um, to steer them in the right places. Like if
Mhm.
you can say to them, hey, did you see this TikTok? Hey, did you see this video? And start steering them to the places that are productive and can actually help them either reach goals or strive for new ones, that's where the magic is going to happen. That's the opportunity is, I'm doing a lot of thinking back today, but when I think back to like with the world before social media, the only way you got to really experience dance is to go see it, to go to convention, to go to competition, to see those dancers who were 2 years ahead of you, 2 steps above you, just a little bit better, gave you something to strive for. And now you just open up your phone and you get that, which is amazing. I think that access has really advanced dance beyond any of our, like 20 years ago, we wouldn't have even thought that dance would look like it does today. But just to get back to like, I think as parents, we really just have to, or dance educators, we really have to focus on, you know what, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this with them. I'm going to look at it. And I don't think there's any way around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And that is, I think that's what we are resistant to as people in my age group. That
I'm not getting on Snapchat. I'm not getting on TikTok.
I'm not doing TikTok and I'm not doing these things. That's for the kids. And I love it. You would not drop your kid off at a movie that you don't know what it's about with people that you don't know. And when
you think about it like that, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
You're like, that makes so much sense. Of course I wouldn't do that.
Right.
And knowing that we have to monitor, what are some of the precautions that you think dance educators, parents, studio owners can take to protect students on their own social media channels? So how can they kind of safeguard against like child predators, trolls, cyber bullies, all those people that show up?
It's hard because the gut reaction is like, oh, I should just make the account private so I don't have to deal with any of that. But then you have to remember that social media, as a dance studio owner, as a dance professional, like it's such a beautiful opportunity. It's that marketing channel that you need it to connect with potential clients. You also need to connect with collaborators and teachers and the families in your studio now. So when you make it private, you would be sending this message that like you don't want people to see what you're doing, which is also not the right message to put out there. So I think, the number one thing that you can do to protect your students, your dancers on your own social media pages is be vigilant. I think when you get new followers, if you don't know who they are right off the bat, click on their name. If they're private and they're not showing you anything, or if they have no photos or they have no followers, I don't know, that puts my guards up. So I would DM them if I feel that's called for, and say like, hey, are you new to the area? You can use it as a marketing opportunity. If it seems really creepy, you could just block them.
Right.
This just goes back to branding. You're not for everybody and not everybody's for you. And that's okay. That's great. That's beautiful. But I think like the number one thing you can do is really check out those followers. You could sit down and do it every week and see who's new or you can do it whenever you get a new follower. I don't think any dance studio needs to be out there chasing having 20,000 followers. I don't think there's any need for your average dance studio to be doing that right now. That's educating children. So I think it's relatively easier for an account that size, that's smaller, to say like, yeah, I can do that. I can make sure that people aren't liking my stuff, or like people aren't watching my stories that I don't know who they are. All that information is there for you on Instagram, on Facebook. You can see who is looking at your stuff. So that would be my number one thing.
Thank you for that. We actually have a comment from Michelle Mercedes. I learn a lot of repertoire from social media, though. If I do want to consume, I set an intention to really hold space for the dances I watch and learn from them. One of my first dance lessons was you learn the most by watching. So again, what you said, that's consumption, that's acceptable, that's productive, right? And that's an example of what you were saying.
Yeah, so I think maybe the comment stemmed from me saying like, try to be creating when you're going on there, but social media has become such a tool for learning. You see people going live and teaching, or you see people posting full combinations and encouraging you to learn them, and then repost them or share them with your students. So while it is a little bit different, I don't think it's passive consumption. I think that's active consumption. So you're
Yep.
going in order to learn something. Same as you would if there is a teacher who is teaching you how to organize your closet. You might watch all her videos and just consume all of the content you can from her. The same thing can be true for dance. So I think, you know, I would add to my note about creation versus consumption is if you're going to consume, make it an active consumption, not just let me see what I can find and try and do.
Our friend Katie Cropper is on here and says, my mom won't let me have TikTok. Good mama. And but I do have IG Reels. She's a younger dancer. And she said, I always just block people. So that's great
great.
that she's learned that already. So that's wonderful. Katie, you're awesome as always.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a multi-part question. It's kind of rambly, but it's inspired by your stories that you've had over the last couple of days, things you've been asking your followers. So what are some examples of social media behaviors that we may not be aware are negatively impacting our dancers and our youth, but that we need to pay attention to? And a spin-off of that, should studio owners, educators, coaches, leaders share their opinions or personal beliefs on social media? Is following people, yes, honey, you can have that. Melissa, I just told you, see, snack time. Following other people that have maybe a questionable background or, you know, maybe don't have the best of intentions. If you're following somebody like that, maybe you're not doing it, but you're following somebody that has been accused of that. Is that a problem? Or if for me personally, when I was a studio owner, I regulated my students. I said, if I see X, Y, and Z on your social media, even if you're outside of the studio, and it's not directly related to the company, but I see it, you're going to be in trouble, possibly removed. What's acceptable? What's not acceptable? What are things that we may think are innocent that maybe aren't so innocent?
So when you say what we see from studio owners or from dancers, I guess?
All of the above.
Okay.
Dancers, studio owners, parents. There's just so many examples of things that I see happening on a regular basis that I just wonder, is the damage worse than what we think it is?
Yeah. So I think that, you know, the number one rule of social media is once it's out there, it's out there. So that's definitely something you have to keep in the back of your mind anytime you go on social media. You know, I was one of the lucky ones who was in college when Facebook came out, which meant you had access to you were one of the first people on Facebook. And I remember people saying like, you know, 5 years into it, they're like, oh, well, now everyone can see what you put on Facebook when you were in college. And you saw a lot of photos deleted really quickly from people's pages, because once it's out there for good. And I think that's something that we all know now, but I don't know that it's ingrained in students as much now as it was when social media was just becoming so open and public.
Well, because they don't know anything else. This is all they know.
They don't know any different
of the immediate, the now. You know, right now, that's what the thought process is, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like having that in the back of my mind, I have to say the number one thing that makes me cringe when I see it posted, and it's probably not gonna be what you think it is, but it's when studio owners or teachers or really anybody posts personal information about someone else. And what I'm talking about is if I see a birthday post on that dancer's birthday with their first name and last name telling me how old they are, I've got their personal information.
Right. Wow.
How many things do you use your birth date for to verify info? Now, granted, usually you have to have some other piece of information.
Right.
And I hate to think that there are people out there looking at that, writing it down, taking notes and stuff, but it's not necessarily people, it's robots, it's, you know, dark web and all that stuff you don't want to think about. It exists, it's out there. So, you know, I love celebrating the dancers' birthdays, but I think do it in a monthly post and put all their first names on there and nobody's ages, and let's celebrate everybody at one time, or put it in the newsletter that doesn't go on social media. That is, you know, probably my number one thing that I just, it kills me when I see that, because I don't want anybody's birthday out there unnecessarily.
Right.
The other thing that goes right alongside that for me is when you're posting dancers' whereabouts. And what I mean by that is you are sharing live videos from class on a Tuesday because it's Taught Tuesday, and I can tell by where the sun is that it's probably around 3 o'clock. And now I know that these 4-year-olds are in class at this dance studio at this time, and
Right.
parents aren't allowed in right now. And that just makes me super nervous as a parent and very uncomfortable as an educator. And I also think that goes for like when you're going away to competition and you've got a picture of the competition team and you're tagging all these dancers and saying that they're not at home right now. They're in this hotel with their parents, not at their houses. And I hate, again, you hate to think that anyone's sitting there looking at it like that, but I always have that in the back of my mind. You have to think that way, that once you put it out there, it's out there. And the last one in that category is when dancers are graduating, they're going to school, they're choosing a major. We don't need to give all that information out. You don't need to tell anybody where this 18-year-old girl or boy is going to college to live by themselves for the first time and what building they're going to be going into all the time because they're studying X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And what they look like.
Right. In their description, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you're tagging, like you're giving their like handle away too, if it's on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. You hate to think of what could happen, but you have to keep that in the back of your mind, I think.
Now you're talking about businesses. So you're talking about business profiles. You're not talking about people who have privacy settings engaged on their personal profiles. You're talking about public business pages, right?
Right. So yeah, so I'm speaking about like the dance studio owner or the dance professional who wants to celebrate their students, which I am all for, but I think there are safe ways to do it where you're not exposing anyone to as much danger. I mean, take a picture of the Tot class, but don't post it when they're there. Use it in your marketing 3 weeks down the line and say like, look at our great Tot classes. And that's what I try to help people with, is that content strategy so that they know what they're going to be posting. So they're not like, oh, what do I post? Oh, I'll post these kids. They're cute right when they're there. So there was a second part to that question though.
Really? Oh yeah, there was a lot. So the next part is
really quick. Can I interject just a second, because I do want to your point with the studio educators, I want to highlight just some issues that I have seen in the past with tagging and things. When you tag someone, a lot of settings in their page is they're public. So if you tag someone, your post shows up publicly on their page. So you have to be very careful about tagging, and you have to be very careful about what pages you like, who you like, and who you follow, because especially in Instagram, it will suggest to all of your followers that they follow those people too. So if you're following someone questionable or someone who may be controversial, you have to be aware that a lot of your Instagram followers, which include your parents and your students, you may like fill in the blank page too.
So what is the answer to that though? Because that's happening a lot. Let's use the dance community as an example. There's a lot of people that are being called out for a lot of shady behavior right now. And I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole nother, naming and shaming is a thing. And I don't want to, that's another episode. But if that's happening, should studio directors and educators be unfollowing those people? As an example for their students? I mean, what is acceptable in that regard?
Well, I feel like this is a very complicated one because social media does become so personal when it is a personal account that you also use as your, say, professional account, maybe like a dance teacher would who isn't a studio owner.
Yeah.
I think that's a more complicated situation, which gets into the whole, should teachers follow their students? Should students follow their teachers?
Well, that was my next question. Yeah.
We can go there. I can go there. I can go back to mixing business and personal opinions.
Well, I think address
Okay.
that. Because I think there's a lot of people that include, especially the post-election, there was a lot of political,
Mhm.
discussion going on. There's a lot of, like I said, shady behavior from individuals in the dance community that has been brought to light. And a lot of maybe studio pages are still following those people. Is that acceptable?
Yeah. So, for me, growing up as the daughter of a small business owner, if it's should we mix personal activity with the business page, the short answer is no,
Mhm.
because it is your business, but it is also your livelihood, and it is also your teachers' livelihoods, what you put out there. So the short answer is no. But I do think it's much more complicated than that. And I did ask a question like this on my story this week on Instagram. I got mixed answers, and I got a lot of people who sent me, oh, I can't really answer this because it's so hard. It's not really black and white. And I think that's totally fair. I think, my example here that I always like to give is if I ran a liturgical dance studio, I think it would be fair if I, shared religious values on my page, which to
Right.
some would be a personal view and could be perceived as controversial. But in general, I think as a general studio owner, you don't have this specific lane that you're in like that. I think it really goes back to, something I always go back to is you're not for everybody and not everybody's for you.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out to what degree you are okay with that. Your personal views, if you decide to put them out there on your business page, if you decide to keep following these people, if you decide to keep commenting on these posts, that could put you out of business. That has happened with small businesses. Their social media that they've even posted on their personal accounts has been connected back to them, and it has put people out of business. So if you can accept that you're not for everybody, and you can afford to lose your business over it potentially, then you should post your personal views.
Right.
If you are not okay with that, which I think many people would prefer to keep their businesses and their livelihoods. I think you have to take a really clear look at what you're sharing and say, am I on one? Am I too far to one side or the other here that I am going to turn people away? And
Or simply just get a private profile for your personal and have your business and leave all the personal off of it. That would seem to me to be the logical answer, but I don't know. I mean, I have a personal that's very private. I
Mhm.
control who follows me and all of those things. And then we have our business profile, which we do not, we don't post our political views. I don't post my political views at all on Facebook or
Well, I
social
think
media.
I think having a private account definitely helps. I think you have
Yeah.
to be really mindful of who you let follow you. And I know as studio owners, and if you're a parent and a studio owner of a child who's dancing, then you become more than just the business owner. At some point, you are the parent of a child who is friends with other children,
Right.
and do their parents now want to follow you on social media?
Right.
And then things get screenshotted and things get sent back, and then they end up on Facebook groups. And
Which, I mean, that is the end right there. When it gets on the Facebook groups, that is the
It's
power.
a done deal.
Yeah.
I think that also, not to belabor this, but we also have, and this is I think a whole different show, is
It
that we
is.
have to understand the line between ethics and politics. So I
I
think
love
that
that.
posting things that show your ethical standing
Is
and is
That's right. It's very
different than saying I endorse a political candidate,
Mhm.
or I, I believe in this political movement
movement.
or
Right.
something like that. Like posting beliefs about your ethics and the justice and human nature are different, and I think those get blurred. So like I said, I think that's a totally different episode of finding out where that line is, but I don't want people to be fearful of saying that they stand up, love, care, and support their families and people in their studios because
Right.
they're scared that's going to be political.
Right.
Right. And every town and every community and every studio is so different. that I think it really comes back to, knowing what you stand for and who you serve and what your values are, and making sure that you're attracting the people who align with that. That's and if you stay true to that, and that's how you share on social media and share in your studio, that's going to really help you find a true north when it comes to, do I post this or not?
And the bottom line, and I think we can all agree with this, is that when you are working with children, whether you're a coach, a studio owner, an educator, what have you, if you are working with children, you have a responsibility to protect them at all costs. Period. End of story. Right?
Yes. There's no question.
So whatever that encompasses and whatever that entails, that is the mission. That is the goal in everything that you do. That has to be in the front of the mind.
Right. We have a great comment on Facebook Live from Michelle. I feel there's no fear in posting our personal views and values as long as we are showing up on the side of justice. And I would even add to that the side of justice and kindness. As long as we are showing up on the side of justice and kindness, that there's no problem with that. And then Katie's mom, Michelle, is on. That's so
Hi,
cool.
Michelle.
The mother-daughter duo watching Beyond the Steps. I loved it. Just wanted us to be aware, which is a great point. I did think about this when you were speaking, Kelly, that on smartphones, location data is often attached to your picture. So if you take a photo in your backyard, she said someone could pull that data and have your home address. It does. I mean, I know I've turned location services off on my phone totally, because when I post things on social media, I don't want it to say Charlotte, North Carolina, this neighborhood, which it does. It will come up. If you have a neighborhood name, it will come up. And it's like, oh my God, I don't want.
That was not the intent. Right.
Yeah. My location services are also turned off.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with that more.
And that's a great point, because a lot of people don't understand either how to get to all those privacy settings on their Facebook profile, on their Instagram, on their phone. That's not something they think to look at or adjust. They go with whatever the factory settings were, and that's it. So it's important to note too, if you are out there and you have not looked at your settings and looked into what they are set at, you probably want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Sooner than later.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think I know we were going to talk about should students and teachers be friends, but the comment about the location services, it took me back to when we were talking about that creation versus consumption. And if we are encouraging students to make videos, to find pictures, to do things on social media, I think that is also where great educational moments like this can come in, that say, like, make sure your location data isn't turned on when you're sharing this photo that I'm telling you to go take. If we're encouraging them to create, that is when those little moments of education can come in. Don't take the photo in front of your house with the house number showing, with your location services turned on for your neighborhood.
Right.
Things like that. I think those are really important teaching moments.
So then to go back to, and I know we have to move on to the next topic, but, for studio owners that have faculty members, is it appropriate to expect your faculty members to maintain boundaries between their personal and profile on social media? It's gotten a lot of people in trouble, inappropriate relationships with adult teachers and children. And if they're minors, should they even be engaging outside of the studio with an educator or a leader?
I mean, I think one of the things I think is that and I think Bree, you touched upon this, is that there should be some social media contracts in place for studio and dancer, just like there might be a code of conduct you have to sign. I think there should be a social media code of conduct that you should sign, but that almost doubly goes for teachers. I think it goes back to that studio is someone's livelihood. It's their livelihood. And if you're going to be representing that, then you have the right to hold your teachers to certain standards, definitely. I work for a major corporation, and there's social media things that I have to follow. I'm one of thousands of employees. That dance teacher is one of 3 representing your business.
Right.
That's got much more many more eyes on it, much more visibility to that even. So I think it's perfectly reasonable. You're signing a contract of employment, and that includes how you should conduct yourself at the studio. And if you're presenting yourself in public, which includes social media, you need to present yourself a certain way. I did ask the teacher student follower question,
Yeah,
and a lot of gray area on that one too.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Personally, right now I teach college age students. I have a separate professional account where I just post dance stuff. I use it to communicate with them and see what they're doing. And I find it really useful to get to insight into their lives. Now, they're 18 and up. They're not 13, which is the age when you are allowed to be on social media. 13, not 8.
And I will tell you that is not even
Not being
upheld.
interested.
There are kids much younger than 13 that are accessing social media. So that is
Oh,
like a line, but
yeah.
it's definitely crossed.
Yeah. Outside of the dance world, my child isn't old enough to be on social media, but when she is, I don't want her interacting with 25-year-olds on social media. I don't want my 13-year-old following a 25-year-old's account, not knowing what the 25-year-old's going to do. The 25-year-old teacher is going to go to a bar. I don't know. I mean, she has every right to do that. She's an adult. But I don't want my 13-year-old to see that and idealize that, even if I'm sure the 25-year-old teacher is a wonderful human being and a caring and nurturing educator. Her personal life is going to look different through the eyes of a 13-year-old
Yeah.
than it does to her. And, I think that's one of the biggest things with social media is that a child's brain at 13 or younger or up to 18 is still developing, and the way that they view things is so much different than the way that we take them in as adults. So my short answer for teachers and students following each other is no, unless it is that professional account where you're giving them information about dance, you're sharing events, you're sharing maybe warm-ups, or you're sharing dance challenges for them to do. That's very directed at them. But as far as teachers putting their personal lives and following students, and I think that's a recipe for trouble.
Would it be fair to say though that for a dance educator, if they do have their personal page and they do have students that follow them on there, if you're going to allow people to follow you of all ages, would it be fair to say that your responsibility then is to make sure that you're not posting inappropriate content, that you're not posting foul language, and they can follow you, but maybe don't follow them back,
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you want to open it up to allow dancers to follow you, if you're going to be posting pictures of your dog and pictures of your bathroom renovation, or pictures of crafts you like to do or food you like to make, and dance things, I think it's fair. But like you said, you do have to consider your audience,
Yeah.
and consider your career and your role in these dancers' lives.
Yeah, I think it's hard for dancers too, because dancers are their own business. And so when you're a teacher, a dance educator, and it's very common for people to fly all over the country and teach guest classes and choreography at other studios. Like, that's how you promote yourself. I mean, we've already discussed how instrumental social media is for business. So, it is hard to draw a line in the sand and expect dance educators not to promote themselves or their business, which is themselves, on that platform, because they would be remiss in ignoring that opportunity, right? But again, I think it's fair that if that is the case, then you have this unspoken responsibility to just filter your content.
Yeah, I would say filter it, and think about what the purpose of your profile is. Is it to connect with all these dancers and further your career development and your teaching platform, or is it to connect with your friends from college?
Yeah,
because those are, and can it be both a little bit? Yeah, but I think you should, if you're using it as a professional platform, you really need to focus on what that goal is.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. That was really helpful. Really, really helpful. I know that was a lot of directions that we went in, but I think it's so important to address it because it's stuff that happens all the time. So Melissa, take us into the next section, if you would.
I want to talk about, you talked about the contracts and that having a social media contract, just like you would a code of conduct in the studio. And I know that a lot of studio owners are probably putting those in place for students as well as teachers. But as far as for students, how can and should parents support those rules and expectations? So how can they work with the studio owner to support students actually executing what's in that code of conduct?
Yeah, I think this this somewhat goes back to what we talked about with being like as a parent, it's your responsibility to kind of be in there and know what's happening. Knowing that code of conduct. And I liken this to if your dancer is following the dance studio code of conduct, having their hair back, being on time, wearing the proper shoes, being in the uniform if there is one. Until a certain age, the parent is the responsible party for all of that. You're not going to expect a 10-year-old to be able to get themselves to dance on time. So, they can't, if they're late all the time, the dance teacher is going to say something to the parent and say, explain, this is why we have to be here on time. It's important that they do the warm up and that they have time to transition into class and all these things. So I think if the teacher has this contract about social media and is starting to see things that go against that contract, it's a little bit on the teacher to say, hey, parent, I see this happening. This is why it's important. This is why we think it's risky behavior. We need to, get this under control. So it's the parent's responsibility to a certain age that they are teaching the child these things. Be on time. Don't engage in risky behavior. And that's, it's not easy by any means. It's there aren't any set of rules for it. We're writing them as we go, as it changes. And I think that's one of the toughest parts is that every day it seems like there's some new feature or new app or new account. Common Sense Media says that the average person has 8.6 social media accounts.
Holy moly, how do you do that? I can't even juggle 3. I'm like a mess with 3 of them. How do people do 8?
Well, you're like Twitter, Facebook,
Instagram, Facebook.
Say LinkedIn is one as an adult. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok.
No.
And then I can't remember the name of it now.
Oh, Parler.
Parler's a new one. And then there are social networks that are aimed at teens too.
I'm one of the people that needs help. I need this conversation because I'm one of the people that's like, stand head. Like I don't want to do it. I know. It's the bane of my existence. I know I'm supposed to be positive here, but social media kills me.
It's it could be a full-time job trying to keep tabs on all that, which is I think why the conversation has to start when children are younger about what it is and what we're sharing and how to manage it.
Michelle Cropper just said, what's Parler?
Oh, no, Michelle. It's the new it's like the replacement for Facebook, apparently.
Twitter.
It's
the replacement for Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, Kelly knows more than I should. I'm answering like I know. I don't know. It's like the replacement for something.
Yeah, it's
like the
2.0 of Twitter. Apparently, is what it's supposed to be. And this is a great lead into my next question that comes up. There's all these 200,000 platforms. Are there any that prove to be safer or more positive than others, Kelly?
That's a great question.
As far as the ones that dancers want to be a part of, I don't think. I mean, I think that there are people who have developed some social networks that are specifically designed for younger people with more guardrails and more safety and all these things, but I don't think that's where they want to be. They know they don't want to be there. They want to be on TikTok. They want to be on Instagram. They want to maybe be on Facebook. Not much anymore. Right. But I think that the answer is one isn't necessarily safer than the other, because no matter what, there's going to be hidden dangers there that we're not even seeing, that are going to be new accounts, new people that might follow. The best defense is setting up those privacy settings for children. For people under 18, there are privacy settings that should be in place of who can follow you, who can see your stuff, and who cannot. Getting on the Ellen show is not worth your privacy settings, because that doesn't last that long. Ellen's great, I love her,
Right.
but it's just not worth it. So I think it's setting up those privacy settings, having the conversations, and getting in there and seeing what's going on, what's happening, how does this work, where do the messages come in, can I see them, what's hidden, what goes away. Supposedly it doesn't go away.
Okay, so I have a question. So I have this personal. I have a 7-year-old son who, God bless him, has not asked. He has no interest. He has no awareness. He's completely blissfully ignorant to the whole thing. And, I think our goal right now is to just keep him off of it as long as possible. But I know from working with children that there is going to be a day where this child comes home and says, I want a phone, I want to be on TikTok, and I need to and so how as a parent, I mean, I guess it's circumstantial and it's preference, but what would you recommend as a parent to making sure you're navigating your children in those waters and introducing them to it properly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not there yet either with my kids, but I've definitely thought about it a lot, and I've talked with family members and friends who have older children. There's some really great resources, and I did send over a couple links to you, Bree, from our government, and the Canadian and Australian ones are actually really good too, maybe a little bit better, of guidelines and things to know around the privacy and around the posting, and they talk about cyberbullying. One of the things that it doesn't seem realistic, but I've heard is the wait until 8 pledge. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's trying to get people to wait until kids are in 8th grade before they let them have access to these things, which is 13. That's the age that doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists think that an adolescent's mind is ready to start consuming this content in this way and interacting in this way. But before that, you're just not, as a person, you're not ready to
emotionally equipped to deal.
You're not emotionally or mentally equipped to deal with that. I think I can't speak to me in the future me, but me right now thinks that's a great idea. Wait until 8 sounds great. Right. I sound like I'm their spokesperson right now.
And there's people right now at home that are like, yeah, right, just wait.
I know. It's like when you say, I'm not going to let my kid eat chocolate.
Yeah. Or, have a tablet ever. And play on your tablet, please, so I can get something done in my life.
Yeah.
I know
say all those things.
It's so subjective.
And it's really personal. It's not something that we grew up knowing. We didn't have restrictions around that, but I do think about the other restrictions that we had in place. Like, you couldn't do this until you were this old. Like, in our house, it was like you couldn't have a cell phone until you were 16, and that was because you might be driving, and then you might need a cell phone in the car, and that was the only reason we were allowed to have cell phones. But I think it is one of those things. It's family by family. It's having conversations, and when you do decide to introduce it, it is sitting down and doing it with them. And if they're embarrassed to show you, then I wouldn't want my kids on. They're like, right. You have to have that conversation. Why are you embarrassed to show me? What's so embarrassing? What are you sharing that you're not showing me? And maybe there's family contracts too that you can develop about social media, saying, mom will be able to follow me. I'll tell mom all my passwords. I'll let dad see this, and I'll let my guardian see this. There's family contracts that should be in place. It's developing responsibility in our children.
Thank you, because that's helpful for me, because I know we're not too far off from that zone, and that is very helpful. So we are all about actionable items and education on this show. It's what we do. so we like to give homework. We like to give one thing that you want our audience members, the people that are going to watch this later, one thing they can do now and work on now to make a small positive change in this realm in the next week. What
can I really only give one?
You can give
I'm gonna
two.
give I'm gonna give
Give
options.
that.
It's not more than one, it's just options. I mean, I think one
Multiple
option,
choice.
it's multiple choice. One option is definitely to go look at your followers and see if there's anyone in there who's suspicious or you don't really recognize. This might be a time-consuming process if you have a lot of followers, but I do think that it is one that's worthwhile. I think that could be a really good use of time. The second one is kind of two-part. It would be if you don't have both a social media consent form and a social media code of conduct or a contract for your dancers, I would suggest putting those in place.
Okay.
If you don't have those in place, it's hard to say what's okay and what's not.
Would it be fair to say that the parents and the kids should both sign it?
I think up until a certain age, the parents should definitely sign the social media contract. But again, 13, 14, 15, starting to become more responsible for themselves, but they don't make the rules.
Right.
16, 17, 18, we're starting to prepare these students to own more responsibility for themselves. I think it's on the parent might sign it, but it's on the student at a certain age.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. So Kelly was generous enough to provide a resource for us to share with you guys today. It's called #safe on social. What's your gut reaction? And this just gives some guidelines to social media, whether you're a parent or a business owner, a studio owner, whatever. It just gives you some guidelines to implement and follow for your children and good things to think about. So Melissa is going to pop that in the chat on, she already did that on Facebook, and she's also going to pop it in the chat here on Zoom. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful resource, a great base for you to start your work in this area. And again, just to recap, Kelly is tasking us all to go through our followers this week. I'm going to do it. I'm committing to doing it. Melissa, are you going to do it?
I'm absolutely going to do it.
All right. And then for all your studio owners and educators out there, you got to get your social media contract and your social media consent form in place for your dancers. That is our homework for the week. Thank you, Kelly, so much.
Yeah, no, this has been great. Thank you guys so much for having this discussion. I think it's really important, especially in this age where we're growing increasingly online.
Yeah, it's a big one. We could have stayed here all day.
Yes, we absolutely could have, because I have lots of questions.
You can send them over to me.
We'll have you back. We're gonna have you back and do like a part 2.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In 2021, we'll do that.
I love that.
So thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, Bree, for doing this with me and just bringing this type of information to everybody. Thank you to the viewers. We had consistent people in Facebook Live. So hopefully they got some great information. A recording of this episode is available to you after the episode, but you have to sign up with us on Zoom. You can still watch on Facebook Live, but if you sign up to join us on Zoom, that automatically lets us know that you want to get a recording afterwards. So I just dropped that link in the chat on both Facebook and here in Zoom, so that you can see that, and you will get a recording of the episode after it's done. And it is downloadable, so you can also use it and share to people who may also need the information. All of the past episodes are on IGTV at Apollo Performance. So you can go see everything. This is episode 8. So excited. This is episode 8. So you can see all those past episodes there. Next Friday, Turkey Day is coming. Next Friday is Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. We're practicing gratitude Yes, gratitude on that day. And we're thankful for all of our past guests. So we're resharing each one of our past episodes every 2 hours starting at 8 a.m. Just to show all of our past guests some love, and let them know how thankful we are for their guidance and expertise. So be looking for that every 2 hours on Apollo Performance, as well as on Turning Point Dance Creations on Facebook and on Instagram. And we are back live on December 4th, with dance therapist and trainer Kelly Flansburgh to answer the question, how can we better integrate students on the autism spectrum into our current studio curriculum? So we hope that you can join us with Kelly on that day, 2 p.m., Facebook Live and on Zoom. Also, we're looking for experts in 2021. We're setting up our 2021 shows. Y'all have heard that we get all these questions that come up as we do these shows that we're like, oh, we need a future episode on that. So if you have a topic or you feel like you are an expert in a certain area, you really think that this is information that needs to be brought to dance studio educators and parents and dancers, please email us at info@apolloperformance.com or put in the chat or the comments on either Facebook or here. And we will definitely reach out to you and connect with you. And until then, stay on your journey beyond the steps. We will see you in flashbacks next Friday. And then on the 4th of December, back live.
Thank you so much, everybody. Kelly, you're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys soon. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye.